Coming up today, a thrilling start to a new season and a new partnership. Meet some of the doctors ensuring peak performance for Kansas City Current players as well as the everyday athlete. Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell, and welcome to the Morning Medical Update. There has never been a better time to be a female athlete or a fan of women's sports. Today, we wrap up our series on female-focused sports medicine by shining a light on the new partnership between the University of Kansas Health System and Kansas City Current. What a start to the Current season. 3 matches, 3 wins, 11 goals. 2 of those games were played in front of a sold-out stadium, the first ever stadium built specifically for a professional women's sports team. And this season, just like the Chiefs and the Royals, clinical staff here at the health system are caring for the team. And that includes the doctors sitting here at the desk with me. Quite a team that has been assembled to help out these ladies. And first, we're going to start with Dr. Nicole Yedlinski. She is the Chief Medical Officer for the Current. Lisa Vopat is back with us again. She directs the Female Athlete Program at the health system and is the Assistant Chief Medical Officer for the Current. Good to have you back. And then across from me, this is Dr. Matt Vopat, a team orthopedic surgeon for the Current. Good to have you with us. So joining us remotely this morning, we are glad to have Jeff Randall, the head team orthopedic surgeon for the Current. He is in Lawrence, where he is also the head team orthopedic surgeon for KU Athletics through Kansas Team Health. Jeff, good to see you today, Dr. Randall. And we are also so thrilled to be talking with someone leading things behind the scenes at the Current. Joining us live from the new CPKC Stadium, Danny Welniak is the Vice President of Communications. And you might recognize Danny from her television days. She was the sports director at KCTV5 here in Kansas City. So, Danny, good to see you and Dr. Randall this morning virtually. And we're going to start with you, Danny. The season just simply could not have started out any better. What do you think has been kind of the secret sauce behind this success?
Well, first of all, I have to put the asterisks out there that it is still very early in the season. So
I know, I'm sorry.
Exciting. But we still have a long season ahead of us and hopefully end in a championship at the end of November. But I really do think that the secret sauce is a lot of what's been going on here behind the scenes at the Current, whether it's the facilities at the training facility, getting an opportunity to have something that other NWSL teams do not have, and also having a stadium like this. We're out here at CPKC Stadium this morning to kind of show you just how beautiful it is, even when that sun is rising. So the fans are a huge part of that. They want this to be an intimidating atmosphere, and I think teams come in and they don't really know what hits them.
Okay, and I know you don't want to get too ahead of yourself, but I'm not speaking from a team member. I'm just a fan. So we get really excited when we're, when we're 3-0 to hit the ground running. So, but tell us a little bit about why the Current chose the University of Kansas Health System as the official healthcare provider. You have choices.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really, really good and powerful reasons behind that. I think that obviously the medical staff is world class and there's nobody like them. And having the opportunity to have the experience from the high school level all the way to the pros and having the experience with the Royals and the Chiefs just adds to that. But I also think it's so important to be able to talk about the Female Athlete Project and the fact that, at the University of Kansas Health System, your team is putting a significant focus on the female athlete, which we're in 2024, and it's crazy to think that this is now just something that we're talking about, and it hasn't been a focal point in the past. So to be able to really emphasize the female body, the female athlete, and to be able to put an emphasis on the importance of treating female athletes differently than male athletes, I think is a really, really big part of why this is such a perfect partnership.
And how has the partnership been going so far? Not just on game day. This goes back into preseason.
Yeah, it definitely goes back to preseason. The fact that the athletes are traveling a lot. We were in California, we were in Florida for the preseason, bouncing back and forth between Kansas City and here. The facilities are obviously a huge part of that, but the medical staff is massive. And Izzy Rodriguez, one of our athletes, told and said it perfectly at the Teal Rising rally at your facilities. She said, the physicals were the fastest that we've ever had them. Usually those will take a week. It literally took a day. We were in and out, and it was so efficient. And I think that's a testament also to the experience that your team brings and knowing how to deal with athletes efficiently and also how to deal with them in the best possible and professional way. So there's a lot of really good things that have come from this partnership, and I know will continue to.
All right, Danny, stay put because we're going to hear more about your athletic background. Very, very cool, and that gives you a really good insight, and we love to hear your perspective. So thank you for that. I want to turn to Dr. Lisa Vopat now. I mean, just fair to say, goes without saying, just an exciting time to be a part of all that's happening right now.
Oh, it's amazing. You can feel it in the air every time that we're there. You know, not only do we have the new stadium, right, the first purpose-built women's stadium in the world, but you can feel the new the vibe in the team. The medical team is new. Of course, there's some players that are coming in that are new staff, and there's just an excitement. And then you pair that with what's happening in women's sports culture, and you just feel the wave, especially, you know, with what's been going on with the women's, you know, basketball tournament, the viewership, and just the feeling behind it.
Oh, for sure. It really is exciting. And you, of course, have a soccer background, but just watching the support around women's soccer, it's really exciting.
It is, especially here in Kansas City.
Right?
Yeah, it's a soccer town,
right.
And it's amazing. It's just amazing the support and how into it that the fans are. And we feel that. We feel that as medical staff, and it just excites everybody. It just elevates you.
Well, it's interesting when you give fans what they've been looking for, or wanting. They show up. That's the exciting part. Dr. Yedlinski, you walk us through kind of a typical match day. What are you and your staff doing kind of before, during, and after a match?
Oh, that's a great question. So we get there ahead of time. We meet with the players. We meet with the medical staff. We kind of go through all of the issues that they might have and been dealing with for the week prior. And then we also meet with the stadium, the security, the EMS, paramedics that are there. We talk to the observers to make sure that everybody's on board with taking care of those athletes. God forbid if something should happen.
So how are you, not just the matches, but tell us between matches and the recovering and the training, what's going on in those conversations?
Yeah, so we have regular communication between the team as well as with the medical staff of the Current, and we talk about any ongoing injuries or issues that the players might have. We typically go out to that beautiful training facility at least once a week, and we meet with the players. We talk through any issues that they have, and then any players that have any medical needs, we see them here at our facilities at the University of Kansas Health System.
Has it been so cool to be out there, just
it's been fun.
To watch and
really
hear the
good.
fans and to see it all happening?
I mean, there's just so much energy surrounding the team, and really this emphasis on investing in women's sports and the payoff of what it means to invest in women's sports.
For sure. Okay, so we have Dr. Lisa Vopat sitting next to me, and we got to bring in the other Vopat, her brother-in-law. We got to keep him straight. We actually have 3 Dr. Vopats that work in the same department under our roof, so we got to keep them all straight. Dr. Matt Vopat. So I've heard that ACL injuries are very common in female athletes. First, tell us why.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One is female athletes have higher progesterone and estrogen, so overall their their increased risk of ligamentous laxity overall at baseline, and on top of that is their natural anatomy. All this combined, it puts them at increased risk for ACL injuries.
So how do you get one? So kind of give us the lowdown on how you might get one and what that feels like. And
yeah, so a lot of times is mechanics or high. Actually, the highest risk of ACL injuries is non-contact injuries. So everyone always thinks you're supposed to get hit. No, it's actually those pivoting injuries where you'll hear a loud pop, pain, instant pain, and all of a sudden they'll swell up. And those are the most common. So a lot of times when you're watching a live sports performance, a lot of times what happens is like you watch someone, they make a cut and they stop and they fall to the ground. A lot of times that's right there you kind of think maybe that's an ACL injury.
You can see it. So can they keep playing through that, or is somebody immediately out and it's addressed, or how do you know what's happening in the moment?
Unfortunately, that's one of those where you have to assess them clinically to make sure they're unstable, and they do before we get more images like an MRI. But this is one you can't play through. This is one you have to fix, and so they can perform at their high level like they do.
And not make it worse. Let's bring in Dr. Randall. Dr. Randall, do you see this as an opportunity to learn even more and just get better at treating injuries in female athletes?
Yeah, that's interesting because professional women's soccer really has been at the forefront of ACL prevention. Matt was just talking about how we deal with ACL injuries, but they've developed a program through professional women's soccer that we're implementing here at the University of Kansas with our own women's soccer team. And actually the NFL is doing the same thing in a pilot program, but it started with what was called the FIFA 11, or 11 different basic exercises you could do to work on kind of prehab or before the injury happens to prevent ACL reconstruction. So we're excited. This is a great opportunity at KU, similar to what we do with football and the Chiefs and baseball with the Royals. Having this women's professional soccer association through the University of Kansas health system really helps our female athletes here at the undergrad campus in Lawrence as well.
And Dr. Randall, we mentioned that you and Dr. Bopat are orthopedic surgeons for the team. Is your role on the team limited to surgery, or what else are you doing?
Well, this is it's a great situation, because this is a situation where we have a professional women's team and the medical staff is led by women. Lisa and Nicole there in studio with you take the lead. Matt and I have support roles when surgery is needed. We're there. We also have an orthopedic presence at the game to help evaluate injuries as well.
So I want to ask our panel here in studio, with women's sports getting more and more popular, do you think there's a growing interest in female sports medicine as well? I mean, getting specific to the woman athlete? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's been growing probably over the last 10 years. So when I was in my fellowship training 10 years ago, I was part of a female athlete program in Boston. And at the time, that was actually one of the only programs pretty much in the world that sort of highlighted the unique needs of the female athlete. We've seen actually over the last 10 years that has grown. We're seeing more programs pop up in different places, which is wonderful because those females have needs everywhere. So we want those programs to grow. And along with it, we're able to address things a little bit differently than we do with the men.
Dr. Bopat, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's the biggest thing, and I think our team here has actually really opened our eyes to how we need to treat these patients differently. And I think there's been a lot of research done here at the University of Kansas looking into that, how outcomes are different, and they're just not the same. I mean, you have to treat them differently because, like I said, the anatomy is different, the physiological they're different, and so you got to treat them differently.
So that's why you have to be very, very very specific in your training. And you mentioned about 10 years ago. So, Dr. Yedlinski, can you give us an example of just how it's changed, how women's sports medicine is different from maybe 10 or 15 years ago?
Oh, yeah. So if you look traditionally, women athletes have been underrepresented in research. And now with this increased focus on the female athlete, we've now been seeing more and more research studies that are focusing on the female athlete and the difference between the physiology and the psychology of what it means to be a female athlete, what it means to go through that life cycle from early days on into their professional career, and then even after their professional career is over.
And I can add to that too. We actually just completed a study to take a look on what the science has done over the last 10 years. So a study was put out in 2014 that looked at female representation in sports science literature. And women only represented about 39% of the population. So we replicated that and repeated that, and we are just putting it out right now, but it has increased to about 43, 44%. So it has improved, but certainly not at equal levels, and we have a ways to go. When we're looking at female athlete only studies, we've seen little to no increase, and we still only have about 6 to 7% of the literature being focused only on the female athlete, where with men it's closer to 18 to 19%. So it is improving, but again, we got to get things equal.
Every time I have you on, I always say I can just feel your passion, which is it also. I mean, she does so intense, but I mean that is what drove you to create the female athlete program here at the health system. You just said there's just a need. We cannot. Athletes are not all created equal, and certainly men and women, right?
Yeah.
And there's also a need, I think, for the primary care of the female athlete as well, and the focus on that for individuals as they're going through their life. There's the period of time where they're going through puberty, and then they're trying not to get pregnant, and then they're trying to get pregnant, and then they're trying to come back after pregnancy. And what does that mean for the female athlete? And that is that we don't deal with that with the male athletes at all.
You're right.
And it's so important.
Something we don't even think about.
Yeah.
Well, let's let's bring in one of those female athletes, Dani Welniak.
So
you had awesome experience playing professional football, wide receiver for the Dallas Diamonds, full pads, 11 on 11, NFL rules football, and your Rookie of the Year in 2007, Women's Super Bowl champions back in 2008. You also represented Team USA. I'm going to take a big deep breath now that I've introduced you. But back then, did you experience anything that made you feel that women's sports were playing, I would imagine, second fiddle to men's sports? Kind of where were you along this journey of getting women to where we are today? What did you feel?
Well, first of all, thank you for rattling off that resume for me. I think I'm blushing out here, and so I appreciate that. Thank you. I think there's a lot of different things that I experience, especially being in women's professional football, because it is primarily a male sport, and now we're making the adjustment both socially and even mentally for a lot of people that women are on an equal playing field. And so coming up through the ranks, especially in the IWFL and the WFA, we were in high school stadiums. We were playing in men's stadiums. Instead of flying to games, we would take buses to games. And sometimes we'd even have to take vans or rent cars to be able to travel. And so I think there are a lot of different things, from just the experience to still having to have a full-time job aside from just playing the professional sport. All of those things go into it. And we're finally getting to a place, which is why I love working for the Kansas City Current and working in the NWSL, is that we're getting to a place where these women, this is a full-time job. This is an opportunity to live out their dreams and to be professional athletes and focus on their bodies and their health and their recovery and just focus on playing sports, which when I was a professional athlete was not an opportunity, we didn't have that ability to just focus on that. And I think it's really cool to see how the generations are changing from, our grandparents not even thinking women playing sports was an opportunity or a possibility, to now my daughter, who is 3 years old, seeing this stadium and not knowing anything different than women having their own facilities and having the opportunity to be a professional athlete is pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you just saying that. How many times do we say, gosh, just our kids growing up in a world where they don't know anything different from what they're seeing right now? And you're right, Dr. Jedlinski mentioned, you want to be an athlete, you want to have a full-time job, and you also want to be a mom, and you should be able to do all of those things. How did you find that balance?
Well, the beautiful thing about when I played was that I didn't have to focus on being a mom, and I wasn't married at the time. So I was able to focus on being a young athlete out of high school, in college, and going pro. And now we're also seeing that with a lot of the athletes, even at this level, is that they're getting that opportunity at a younger age to go pro and really focus on being a professional athlete. We do, however, here on the Kansas City Current, have two moms on our team, Desiree Scott and Adie Franch. Both have kids, and it's amazing to see how they balance it, because it is hard. It's hard, as we know, just simply to be a mom, and it's hard to be a working mom. But to be an athlete who is also a mom is just another level. And I have so much respect for anyone and any woman who's able to do that. And so I really think we should celebrate them, and we should celebrate those women. And I just love and am inspired by AD and Desi every single day.
Well, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. That's just kind of what women do. Put it all on their plate and make it all happen.
Yes.
So, okay. So if you are watching live, be sure to ask your questions. Use the chat on YouTube or Facebook. We're on the X platform. You can email the Medical News Network. Information is right there on your screen. Let's check in with Dr. Dana Hackinson, former soccer player himself and now medical director of infection prevention and control. Good job to fall back on since you didn't go pro.
Yeah, I get out there with the old guys sometimes, and I really wake up hurting after an hour.
Well, we got some docs here.
Of short-sighted games, so yeah. Yep. Right now, but everything's looking good otherwise as well, as far as infections in the hospital, specifically COVID and influenza. COVID, only 8 active patients in the hospital. That's good. And we did see, I know we didn't necessarily provide that information, but we did see a significant decrease of influenza infections in the hospital as well. Only 2 active admissions this past week. So overall, it's looking good for respiratory viruses right now.
So, Huck, we're seeing plenty of headlines about bird flu in America. Thankfully, probably the biggest threat is to birds, not humans. We talk about dairy cows getting sick with it, and the CDC is closely watching one human who got bird flu while working with those cows. But what is the CDC saying about those human cases?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that especially for this virus, influenza, it does very easily go from humans to other animals and back. That includes mammals, but also birds. Right now, this avian influenza case was due to patients having the patient having significant contact with livestock. If you remember back in 2022, there was a patient who had avian influenza with significant exposure to chickens. That patient survived. This patient looks to be okay as well, just had some conjunctivitis or red eyes. They were treated. I think we should also, though, remind people that avian influenza can be extremely dangerous. Basically, the case fatality rate ranges about around the 50% mark. So half the people that get it have seemed to die. So it can be very serious. But luckily, we do have antivirals to treat it. And also should say this did go under the radar, but there was a week or two ago, there was a child that did get H1N2 influenza virus, and that is a swine or a pig influenza virus. That patient did go to the hospital, also got treated with antivirals with oseltamivir. But we should say that any time right now, especially for our rural partners and communities, when you are working with livestock, such as cows. We've also seen goats that were infected recently with avian influenza up in Minnesota, I believe. But working with livestock or chickens, be very careful. You know, take those time to do those public health measures that Dr. Stites always talks about. Remember, it is always okay to wear a mask. You can help reduce your chance of infection that way. But also the CDC recommends, you know, don't be eating or drinking around the livestock or the chickens. Also, remember to wash your hands frequently before and especially after doing any work out around the livestock as well. Those things will help reduce your risk of getting infection. We should also say that while there has been some non-sustained transmission of these avian influenza viruses from humans to other humans, it is not in the same realm as the typical influenza virus or COVID. It can happen, but it is certainly less frequent. So overall, just protect yourself and your community and understand that when you are working with livestock, take those precautions to help reduce any spread to yourself or your family.
All right, Hawk, thanks so much.
Yeah.
Let's get to some questions from our viewers this morning. And the first one actually is to Dr. Jeff Randall. Mary is curious just about your medical training background and what you remember about women's sports and just how far it's come. And this is no insinuation that it's been a long time since you've been in medical school, I promise. We just wanted your insight. And so let us know. What do you remember?
Well, I remember a time where there were hardly any women practitioners, people like Dr. Yedlinski and Dr. Vopat. I think that the number of females becoming interested in sports medicine has something that's been beneficial to the athlete themselves, because there's a huge need right now. We have a great program that Lisa set up. We've added Joni Pro working with her, but for young women in the medical field, there is a huge need right now for female medical practitioners, because we've learned through time and through our athletes that not only are female issues different than male issues in athletics, but most of our female athletes tend to feel more comfortable and have better relationships and then even better outcomes when they're treated by females. So that's been the biggest thing I've seen. There are more practitioners now than there were a decade or two ago, but there's certainly a need for many more.
So when you see women like Danny Welniak in full pads and you see these people excited about Casey Current, what does that tell you about where we're at and the attitudes and how things are changing about women in sports, where they've always belonged?
No, it's amazing. You referenced the women's basketball tournament, and obviously at KU undergrad, we have 500 athletes, 250 are women, and it's just the popularity's been amazing. That women's basketball game the other night with Iowa and LSU was the second most watched college basketball game of the year between men or women. And if you haven't been out to the Current Stadium, the excitement level there rivals anything you'll see at KU and Allen Fieldhouse or through football. It was fantastic. And there's just been a huge growing interest in female athletes, and I think that right now that's created a huge void in the need for more female sports medicine practitioners.
Is there anything being done for concussion treatment and prevention? Is there a concussion protocol like in the NFL, Dr. Yedlinski?
There is actually, and in fact, one of the nice things about the NWSL is there's dedicated timeouts for any athlete, and we have medical observers that are there to witness any potential injuries that might indicate a concussion. And so there are some wonderful protocols in place to ensure the safety of our athletes.
Question about players' diets. Who makes that diet plan and how strict are they?
Yeah, so the team actually has a registered sports dietitian, Stephanie, and she's wonderful. So she actually sort of looks at the fueling, provides some of the fueling and snack options, and then she'll meet individually with each of the players to go over their intake to make some recommendations. From the medical standpoint, that's a huge interest of mine as well. And so something that I hope to do, because a female athlete's nutrition can really play into how they perform. It can play into whether they have soft tissue injuries or bone stress injuries. And so, I'm trying to meld some of that medical background and making sure that we're bringing the two together.
Okay, I'm just reading this blindly right now. Question from Aaron. Girls sports are booming, especially in wrestling. How important is teaching resilience for mental health? Previously on some teams, you were only one at weight. Now you may be third string.
Yeah.
So
I'm fascinated by the psychology of sport, particularly for female athletes, and what it means. And we just know that female athletes tend to be much more resilient. And maybe that's a testament to the fact that they used to be only one, and now they have this competition. And what does it mean to have this competition? And it's really fascinating. But to be honest, the camaraderie among the KC Current players is just fantastic, and it's so wonderful to see them celebrating each other's wins, and that's just really neat.
Cool to be a part of.
Yeah.
Jeremy just has a nice comment. It's very cool to see that this generation of female athletes will likely produce a greater amount of household names in female athletics than any generation prior, and we're seeing it all unfold live,
that's
in
exactly
real
right.
time.
Yeah.
We don't read this in the history books. We'll be like, we lived it. We were there when it all came to be. I want to get to our kind of our takeaways today. And Danny, I'm going to head back out to you and just kind of what's your takeaway, and then just have you all been surprised about this fan support? I have to ask you. I mean, what has been? What's the? I mean, these. You think you're at Chief Stadium, or and these people they're all in.
It's funny because in my previous job, I was a sports reporter, and I was blessed enough to be able to experience the entire world of sports. It doesn't matter what it is, I probably covered it. And so to witness and see the fan support in Kansas City around sports in general is incredible. The fact that translated from Kauffman Stadium, from Arrowhead Stadium, from Children's Mercy Park to CPKC Stadium here for a women's professional team is amazing. It's breathtaking. It literally works me up every time I walk into the stadium. And we expected it. We knew the fan support would be there. We've seen the trends. But to actually physically be here, see it in person, and feel it is a whole nother level. And so we expected the fan support. I can confidently say that. But to experience it at this level and see these female athletes playing on the pitch behind me with everyone in the stands wearing teal, what a powerful moment and a powerful movement.
That says it all. Yeah, I think it just proves you give Kansas Cityans, something and someone to get behind, and they're going to do it. They're going to buy into it and get excited and support you all the way. Danny, thank you so much. We will see you again. Dr. Randall, what's the big takeaway today?
I think the big takeaway is women's athletics is on the rise, both in participation, viewership, and interest, and the medical care behind it's on the rise, and keeping these athletes safe and preventing these athletic injuries in the future.
Dr. Randall, thank you so much for being with us today. Dr. Matt Vopat, what's the big takeaway?
I'd say I think the Casey Curran's setting a gold standard for female athletics, and I think it's great to see that the future female athletes can look up to, and these are what they can see what they can achieve in the future.
It's not just sports; it's just a big picture, isn't it, Dr. Beaumont? What's the big takeaway?
Oh, same. I just want to reiterate what the guys said. I mean, you just feel it in the air. I mean, we have this momentum going, and it's both on the athletic side and the medical side as well. It's just exciting.
Dr. Yedlinski, I'm going to let you wrap us up. And what's the big takeaway today?
I think we're just now seeing what it means to invest in women's sports and the outcomes that you get and the excitement. And just for the University of Kansas Health System to be part of that is really fantastic.
Well, we will assemble this group many times over the years to talk more about Casey Curran. So thanks so much. All right. Thanks to all of our guests. Thanks to our viewers for being with us today. We'll see you back here Monday at 8. Coming up Monday on the Morning Medical Update. From genetic testing to weight loss and even vaccines, the best way to fight cancer is to prevent it in the first place. I'm Jessica Lovell on the next Morning Medical Update. Hear what physicians and researchers are doing to keep cancer rates trending down. Monday at 8.
Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.